Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Michael and Sarah met in a way that felt like a movie script. He was a young financial analyst ambitious to advance in his company. She was a confident, charismatic woman with a mysterious look that always seemed to conceal more than it revealed. From the start, he found something about her captivating. Sarah was different from the women Michael was used to, more intense, more experienced, more sure of herself. He loved that. During their dating phase, she mentioned only a few things about her past, always in a casual way, as though there wasn't anything significant to share. Michael, in love, never pushed for details. After all, the past was just that, the past. The wedding came quickly, driven by a connection that felt unbreakable. 2 years later, everything was going well. They had a comfortable home, candlelit dinners on weekends, and spontaneous trips that broke the routine. Michael felt he'd found the perfect partner. Then came the proposal, a transfer to Sarah's hometown. For him, it was a new career step, an opportunity for growth. For Sarah, it was a return to her roots. At first, the move went smoothly. Michael's work at the company's new branch was promising, and Sarah seemed at ease being back. But there was something subtle about her that Michael didn't immediately notice. Whenever they walked around town, Sarah avoided certain places, glancing around as if gauging who might see her, small things, easy to ignore. She said she simply didn't want to run into old acquaintances she hadn't seen in years, that she had a different life now. Michael didn't give it much thought. Everything seemed fine until the night of the company party. It was an elegant event with a brightly lit hall and servers passing around champagne. Michael liked taking Sarah to these gatherings. She always knew how to impress people, how to command attention without trying. But something felt off that night. As soon as they arrived, 2 of his team members started looking at her strangely. At first, Michael thought it was in his head, but he soon noticed the looks were not random. They whispered to each other, trading discreet laughter. Michael felt a sudden wave of irritation. He was their boss, and seeing them eye his wife like that bothered him deeply. He wasn't the possessive type, but there was something in their stares. It wasn't just admiration or curiosity, it was as though they shared a secret, as if Sarah was more than just the boss's wife. He watched as Sarah took a champagne flute and blended into the crowd. She either didn't notice the stares or chose to ignore them. Michael tried to shake off his unease, but as the evening went on, he realized those 2 employees weren't alone. Other guests looked at Sarah in the same way, some whispering among themselves. It wasn't paranoia, something was happening. The party carried on, but Michael couldn't relax. What did those looks mean? Why did nobody look at the other executives' wives like that? He tried convincing himself it was all in his head, but every time he looked around, he saw more concealed smiles and knowing looks, not in a friendly way, but as if Sarah was someone everyone already knew, and not just because of her marriage to him. That night, back at home, Michael was restless. Sarah, on the other hand, seemed unaffected. "That was a nice party, right?" she said, taking off her earrings and collapsing onto the couch. Michael hesitated, watching her. Was he imagining things? Did this really matter? The feeling lingered over the next few days, growing in his mind like a seed planted without warning. He didn't want to look paranoid, but he couldn't ignore it either. Finally, at the office, he decided to invite one of his employees for a private talk. He needed to uncover what lay behind those looks, needed to hear from someone else what was going on. That was the moment his life began to change. Michael had never been a jealous man. He believed trust was the foundation of any relationship and prided himself on not being controlling or paranoid. But that uneasy feeling wouldn't go away, the way his employees looked at Sarah at the party, the little snickers, the whispers. That couldn't be a coincidence. The following day at work, he tried sticking to his normal routine, answering emails, reviewing reports, attending meetings. But every break brought him back to the same question: What did those looks mean? Why did his wife seem so familiar to these people? After hours of pretending he could ignore his unease, he realized he couldn't focus until he had some answers. He scanned the office and settled his eyes on one of the employees who had been at the party, David, a more reserved analyst, someone who might speak if pressed. Michael asked David into his office under the pretense of a casual chat. He started by discussing a project, asking about deadlines, but then changed his tone. "I want to ask you something," he said, folding his arms. "Last night at the party, I noticed you and a few others seemed to know Sarah, and it wasn't just a simple no, it was something more." David looked visibly uneasy, shifting in his chair and avoiding Michael's gaze. "What? No, I'm not sure what you mean, boss." His defensive tone only confirmed Michael's suspicions. "David, be honest." "I saw it. I want to know what's going on." David was silent for a few seconds, then let out a heavy sigh, shoulders sagging like he was deciding if he should talk. "Look, boss, I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but since you're asking, your wife, well, she's kind of known around town." Michael felt a chill rise inside him. "Known in what way?" he managed to say, voice quieter than he intended. David hesitated again, then went straight to the point. "Years ago, Sarah and her ex-fiancé had let's call it a very different lifestyle. They went to swinger parties, casual get-togethers, that kind of thing." Michael blinked several times, as if his brain was trying to process the news. "What? Everybody around here sort of knows. They were pretty active, if you know what I mean. This was years ago, but well, people remember. Sarah was insatiable." Michael's heart pounded. A rush of heat ran through his body, followed by a chill. His mouth went dry. "And why didn't anyone ever tell me?" David offered a half-apologetic smile. "Because nobody wanted to be the person to break it to you. Until last night, it looked like you didn't know, and nobody wants to be the messenger with bad news, you know?" Michael stood up slowly, like he needed to find his balance. He had to get out, get some air, process what he just heard. "This was before me," he murmured, more to himself than to David. "Yes, boss, it was before you. But well, her past is kind of town history. Some people don't forget." Michael wasn't sure how the conversation ended. Everything around him felt distant, muffled, like he was underwater. He left the office, got in his car, and drove aimlessly around the city. Sarah had never mentioned any of this. Never. Suddenly, his mind started to piece together a puzzle, small moments, random comments from the past, expressions he hadn't paid attention to. The way Sarah avoided certain areas, how she changed the subject when they talked about her life before they met, the hesitation when she mentioned her ex. Now it all made sense. And it changed everything. Michael drove around for the entire day. By the time he finally parked at home, the sun was setting, but he still couldn't figure out how to go inside, how to act normal after what he discovered. His chest felt unbearably heavy, as if carrying a burden he never wanted. He took a deep breath before opening the door. The smell of homemade food hit him. Sarah was in the kitchen, busy chopping vegetables, the radio playing in the background. It looked like just another day, but it wasn't. Michael closed the door a bit harder than usual. Sarah turned to look at him, smiling. "Hey honey, you're home early." He stood there for a few seconds, just observing her. How could she act so normal? How could she be so indifferent? "Did it never occur to you to tell me?" The question slipped out before he could stop it. Her smile faded. "Tell you what?" Michael walked closer, dropped his keys on the table, and folded his arms. "About your past. About what you and your ex used to do in this town." The silence that followed was overwhelming. Sarah slowly set the knife down on the counter and rested her hands on the sink, as if she needed a moment to absorb his words. "Who told you?" she asked quietly, with a forced calm but without real surprise. Does it matter? What matters is that everyone knew, everyone except me. She turned around and crossed her arms, mirroring his stance. I didn't tell you because there was no reason to. It was before you, Michael. Before us. He laughed, though it was humorless. Before me, you slept with half the town and thought I never needed to know? She narrowed her eyes. Half the town? You're exaggerating. Am I? Because it feels like wherever I go, someone's already seen you in a way I should never have to face. She sighed and shook her head. This doesn't change anything between us. I'm the same person you met, the same woman you married. Michael ran his hands over his face, frustrated. You don't get it. It's not just what you did, it's the fact that everyone else knew except me. I walked around this city with you thinking our marriage was solid, while people stared at me like I was clueless, like I was the last to get the joke. She narrowed her eyes. And what exactly did you want? For me to introduce myself by saying, "Hi, I'm Sarah, and I used to live a wilder life?" Michael felt anger flare up inside him. It's not about a wild life, Sarah. You and your ex had a lifestyle completely different from what we have now. I had the right to know who I was marrying. And what would you have done if you'd known? She asked, the question quick and challenging. He opened his mouth but couldn't speak. Exactly. You would have walked away. That's why I didn't tell you, because I knew it meant nothing to me, but it would mean everything to you. The silence between them was so thick it felt suffocating. Sarah wasn't apologizing. She wasn't crying or begging for forgiveness. She just stood there, unflinching, gazing at him as if whatever happened next was entirely in his hands. Maybe it was. Michael didn't sleep that night. He stayed on the couch, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of something he had no idea how to carry. It was 3 a.m., and Sarah was still in the bedroom, probably sleeping peacefully, showing no sign of regret or remorse. That was what bothered him most, the fact that to her, it didn't matter. It was just a distant memory, something irrelevant. But to him, it felt like the ground had opened up under his feet, like something essential in their relationship had been ripped away without warning. He always believed he knew his wife, knew her habits, her tastes, her quirks. He knew how she liked her coffee, no sugar, with a dash of cinnamon. He knew she always slept on her left side, that she had an irrational fear of thunder, that she hated leaving the bed unmade. He thought he knew every detail about the woman he loved. But now? Now he felt like he'd never known her at all. That thought haunted him. Who was Sarah? She left for work the next morning without much discussion, just a brief look, a nod, like she was giving him time to process. But time did nothing to help. In fact, the longer he thought about it, the more he sank into his own mind. As the day dragged on, he noticed something unsettling, how selective the human mind can be. Just the night before, he had still loved Sarah. He still wanted her, still saw her as the woman he'd chosen for life. If he had never learned any of this, he would have kept on loving her exactly the same way. But now that he knew, everything felt different. The way she moved through the house, the way she touched him, her voice, none of it had changed, yet it felt like it had. It made no sense. It was irrational, but it was real. He tried to convince himself it didn't matter. Sarah had never cheated on him. She hadn't done anything like that since they'd been together. But the problem wasn't that, it was the sense that he'd been living a lie. If she could hide something this big for 2 years, what else was she hiding? Then came the question he dreaded, if he had never found out, would he still love her the same way? The answer was obvious, yes. And that was what tormented him most. That night, he didn't wait for Sarah. He left first. He needed space, air. He drove for hours, feeling suffocated by this weight of truth. Eventually, he stopped at a bar, ordered a whiskey, then another, and another. But no drink could erase the questions in his head, because how many secrets lie beneath the surface of our relationships? And more importantly, could he live with this one? The bar was nearly empty, just a few people scattered at tables, lost in their own silent troubles. Michael turned his glass in his fingers, watching the amber liquid swirl under the dim light. He wasn't the type to drink like this, but that night he needed something to dull his thoughts. No amount of alcohol could erase the doubts gnawing at him. Sarah's words echoed in his mind, "I'm the same person you met." But was she really? Or had he only seen in her what he wanted to see? He wondered, if he'd never found out, would things still be fine? They'd be planning their future, maybe even talking about having children. But now everything felt tainted by that revelation. What hurt the most was that Sarah didn't seem regretful. She wasn't trying to make things easier or soften the blow. She just accepted her past as unchangeable. Maybe that was what really wounded him. A woman approached the bar and ordered a drink. Michael glanced at her, blonde hair, leather jacket, bright red nails. She saw him looking and smiled. Rough night? He gave a bitter laugh. Something like that. She tilted her head, studying him. You look like someone trying to make a decision. He finished his drink. And if you're right? She shrugged. Then I'd say if you're thinking about it this hard, you already know the answer. He stared at his reflection in the mirror behind the bar, tired face, dark circles, lost eyes. She was right. He already knew. Michael left some money on the counter and walked out without another word. The house was dark when he got back. Only a small lamp in the living room was on. Sarah was on the couch, legs crossed, holding a cup of tea. She looked at him with a mix of expectation and exhaustion. I figured you'd been drinking. Michael didn't reply right away. He took off his coat, tossed it on a chair, and just looked at her, the woman he loved, the woman who until just days ago had been everything to him. But now he saw something else, and he realized the truth. It wasn't Sarah who had changed. It was him. He knew now, and he could never see his wife the same way again. No matter how much he tried to rationalize, telling himself the past doesn't dictate the present, something inside him had broken. I can't stay here anymore, he finally said, voice low, almost a whisper. Sarah didn't look surprised. She closed her eyes briefly, as if she'd been prepared for that. I figured you'd say that. Michael felt his chest tighten. Part of him wanted her to beg him to stay, to say something that could make it all go back to the way it was. But Sarah wasn't that kind of woman. She just sipped her tea, set the cup down, and looked at him. I don't regret my past, Michael. If you can't live with it, then you should go. He swallowed. I wish I could. She gave him a sad smile. I know. Michael grabbed the suitcase he'd left in the hallway. He didn't know where he would go, but he knew he couldn't stay there. Before leaving, he looked at Sarah one last time, and at that moment, he realized he still loved her. But sometimes love isn't enough. He shut the door behind him, leaving not just a house but part of who he used to be. That night, walking alone down the empty street, Michael learned a harsh lesson. Michael spent his first days at a hotel in a fog. His nights were sleepless, and his days dragged as he tried to distract himself. Working was pointless, he couldn't focus. Whenever he picked up the phone, Sarah's name seemed etched into every thought. He figured time would lessen the pain, that the distance might help him see things clearly. But it didn't. Each night away from her only made the emptiness grow. Late one night, it hit him like a punch to the gut, he didn't want a life without Sarah. Love was never the problem, the love was still there, intact. The real issue was the city itself, the stories hanging over them like a ghost, the looks, the whispers, the memories of things he hadn't lived but that seemed to haunt every corner. What if the problem wasn't her, but this place? The next morning, Michael made a decision. Sarah opened the door, surprised to find him standing there. She didn't say anything, just folded her arms and waited. He took a deep breath. I love you. I never stopped loving you. She lowered her eyes for a moment but didn't smile. But, he swallowed hard, I can't live here. I can't walk around this town without feeling like I'm constantly facing your past. She gave a small nod, as if she knew this was inevitable. I know. Michael took a step forward and held her hand. I don't want to lose you, but I need to leave this place. And I'd like you to come with me. She finally looked directly at him, and there was something new in her gaze, a quiet relief, like she'd been waiting for a way out too. Then let's go. He blinked, taken aback by how quickly she'd answered. You really want to? She offered a faint smile. I asked for a transfer 2 days ago. The company agreed. Her words made Michael feel a wave of warmth in his chest. So. But she cut him off. Then we'll start over somewhere far from here. 6 weeks later, they arrived in a new city, a place where nobody knew Sarah, where no one looked at Michael like they knew something he didn't. The past still existed, but it didn't matter anymore, because there, in that new place, the only past that mattered was the one they were creating together. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.